Most people believe blood sugar problems are solved simply by eating better. And while improving food quality absolutely helps, it only addresses part of what actually controls glucose in your body. The part almost nobody talks about is what happens to blood sugar overnight. During the hours when you're not eating, not moving, and not consciously doing anything at all. Because while you sleep, your metabolism does not shut down. Your liver is still active, hormones are still being released, glucose is still being processed. And depending on your metabolic environment, your body is either stabilizing blood sugar or quietly converting excess glucose into stored fat. That overnight window, between your last meal and the moment you wake up, it is one of the most important metabolic periods of the entire day. Yet most nutrition advice completely ignores it. Here's the uncomfortable reality that we will explore in this series. Every night, your liver has two main options. It can clear excess glucose from the bloodstream and prepare your metabolism for the next day. Or it can convert that glucose into fat through a process known as de novo lipogenesis. Which of those happens is influenced less by what you ate earlier in the week, and more by the metabolic signals present in the hours before bed. This is why many people improve their diet, reduce sugar, and still wake up with elevated fasting blood glucose. The issue is not always what they ate. It's how their body handled glucose overnight. To understand why this happens, we need to look at what your body actually does after your last meal. We'll see that in the next part. To understand why this happens, we need to look at what your body actually does after your last meal. When you finish eating, blood glucose rises. In response, your pancreas releases insulin. That insulin acts like a signal telling your cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream. Muscle tissue absorbs a large portion of that glucose first. Think of muscle as a storage sponge. The more metabolically active muscle you have, the more glucose can be stored without much difficulty. But once muscle glycogen starts to fill up, the liver becomes the primary processor. And unlike muscle, the liver has a backup strategy that can create problems over time. When excess glucose continues to circulate, the liver begins its backup strategy. We will explore how this becomes fat in the next chapter. When excess glucose continues to circulate, the liver converts that glucose into triglycerides, essentially turning sugar into fat. This process is called de novo lipogenesis. This is not a rare occurrence. Research has shown that elevated blood sugar significantly increases liver fat production through this pathway. Over time, this contributes to fatty liver, insulin resistance, and long-term metabolic dysfunction. But here's where things become even more important. Your liver behaves differently at night. It operates on a circadian rhythm, a biological clock inside liver cells that changes metabolic behavior depending on time of day. This shift is critical for your health. In the final part, we will see how timing your meals correctly can support this natural repair process. Stay tuned. During daylight hours, the liver is optimized for active glucose processing. But at night, it shifts into a different mode. Glucose uptake decreases, glucose output increases, and the liver begins cellular repair processes. If blood sugar is still elevated when you go to bed, because you ate late, consumed refined carbohydrates, or snacked before sleep, you're forcing the liver to process glucose at the exact time it's programmed to slow down. The result is inefficient glucose clearance, higher fasting blood sugar, and gradually worsening insulin resistance. This is the metabolic window most diets ignore. Changing what you eat matters, but supporting what your body does overnight is just as important. And this is where the simple drink I'm about to show you comes in. It's not a supplement, it's not a meal replacement, and it's not a trendy detox. It's a 2-ingredient drink that targets overnight glucose metabolism using mechanisms that have been studied in clinical research. Before we break down the science, you need to understand one thing. This is not about flushing sugar instantly. It's about changing how your liver handles glucose during the overnight fasting period. That distinction matters, because the goal is not a temporary drop in blood sugar. It's improving metabolic regulation while you sleep. In the next section, I'm going to show you exactly what the drink is and explain why each ingredient works. See you there. The drink is simple: pure water and fresh lemon. This combination supports hydration and provides essential vitamin C without spiking your glucose before bed. However, the most important ingredient isn't in the glass. It's your discipline. Maintaining a consistent metabolic routine requires a strong mindset. It means choosing your health over late-night cravings every single night. Discipline is the bridge between understanding the science and seeing the results. When you stay committed to your biological rhythm, you allow your liver to perform its natural repair processes effectively. True health is built night after night. Stay disciplined, stay focused, and let your metabolism work for you. Thank you for following this journey. Your biological journey continues every single night. We'll see you in the next masterclass. Now that you understand what happens to blood sugar overnight, let's talk about the drink itself. And more importantly, why it works. Because this isn't about trends or detox claims. The effect comes from two ingredients that influence glucose metabolism through well-documented physiological mechanisms. The drink is simple: warm water, raw apple cider vinegar, and Ceylon cinnamon. That's it. Two ingredients working through complementary pathways that target overnight glucose regulation. Let's start with apple cider vinegar. The active compound responsible for most of its metabolic effects is acetic acid. When you consume diluted apple cider vinegar, acetic acid is rapidly absorbed and transported to the liver, where it begins influencing cellular energy pathways. Inside liver cells, acetic acid is converted into acetate. This conversion changes the AMP to ATP ratio inside the cell. AMPK is often described as the body's metabolic master switch. When activated, it tells cells to stop storing energy and start using it. In the liver, this has two important effects. First, AMPK suppresses hepatic glucose production, the process where the liver releases stored glucose at night. When AMPK is activated, this glucose output is reduced. Second, AMPK improves insulin sensitivity. This allows cells to respond more efficiently to insulin, helping glucose move out of the bloodstream and into tissues where it can be used. A clinical study published in Diabetes Care examined vinegar consumption before bed in individuals with elevated blood sugar. Researchers found that fasting glucose the next morning was reduced compared to placebo. The effect was modest but measurable. This means you wake up with lower glucose. But our second ingredient, cinnamon, works differently. Cinnamon influences insulin signaling directly, but the type of cinnamon matters. There are two common types: Cassia cinnamon and Ceylon cinnamon. Cassia contains higher levels of coumarin. Coumarin is a compound that may stress the liver when consumed regularly. This is why the distinction is so important. Ceylon cinnamon contains very low levels of coumarin and is considered safer for daily use in a nightly drink. Ceylon cinnamon contains bioactive compounds such as cinnamaldehyde and polyphenols. These compounds interact with insulin receptors on the surface of cells, helping the body manage glucose more effectively. There's also a third effect that's often overlooked: the gut microbiome. Both apple cider vinegar and cinnamon influence gut bacteria. During the night, gut microbes remain metabolically active. Some of these bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids. These fatty acids help regulate glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity. Acetate, derived from acetic acid, is itself a short-chain fatty acid. It can influence microbial balance and support bacteria associated with improved metabolic health. Cinnamon polyphenols also appear to promote microbial diversity and support beneficial species linked to better glucose control. This means the drink may not only work acutely, but with consistent use, it may gradually improve the biological environment that regulates metabolism. And that brings us to how to prepare it correctly, because small mistakes in preparation can significantly reduce the effectiveness of the drink. Precision matters when targeting metabolic pathways. Choose raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar that contains the mother. This cloudy sediment is a colony of beneficial bacteria and enzymes that contribute to its bioactive properties. Start with 1 cup of warm water, not boiling. Very hot water can degrade delicate molecules. Warm water matches body temperature, aiding in faster cellular absorption. Add 1 to 2 tablespoons of the vinegar. Proper dilution in at least 200 ml of water is a clinical necessity to protect your esophagus and tooth enamel over time. Remember, more is not better. This specific range is sufficient to activate the AMPK enzyme without causing distress. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. Add half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon. It must be Ceylon, the true cinnamon, to ensure long-term liver safety. Ceylon lacks the high coumarin levels found in the common Cassia variety. Its primary compound, cinnamaldehyde, acts as an insulin mimetic. It helps unlock cells so they can absorb glucose more efficiently during your fast. A small squeeze of fresh lemon juice is optional but highly beneficial. Vitamin C and limonene work in synergy with cinnamon's polyphenols. This enhances the overall antioxidant capacity of the drink. Avoid all sweeteners. Even honey will cause an insulin spike, defeating the purpose. Consume this mixture approximately 30 minutes before sleep. This timing allows the acetic acid to reach the liver just as it begins its release cycle. A clinical tip: rinse your mouth with water after drinking to protect your tooth enamel. Join me in our final chapter as we summarize the long-term biological impact of this powerful and consistent nightly ritual. This is not a magic drink. It is a biological tool designed to leverage specific metabolic pathways. When we look at the science, the results are grounded in physiological truth rather than detox claims. By targeting the overnight fasting window, we address the dawn phenomenon, the natural rise in blood sugar that occurs as the liver releases glucose to prepare your body for waking up. The acetic acid and cinnamaldehyde work together to dampen this spike, ensuring you start your day with a more stable metabolic baseline and reduced oxidative stress on your cells. Furthermore, stabilized blood sugar promotes deeper sleep. When your body isn't fighting high glucose, your hormone balance remains more aligned with your natural circadian rhythm. This habit works best when integrated into a lifestyle of metabolic health, including proper nutrition and activity. It is one essential leg of your metabolic stool. Thank you for joining this masterclass. By focusing on the science and maintaining consistency, you empower your body to regulate itself effectively. Support your biology, and it will support you. Now, let's talk about expectations, Cassia, because this is where most health advice becomes misleading. You will not drink this once and wake up with dramatically different blood sugar. That's not how physiology works, and presenting it that way would be inaccurate. What research actually shows is a modest but measurable reduction in fasting glucose when this drink is used before bed. The effect is not dramatic overnight, but it becomes meaningful with consistency. For example, in studies analyzing vinegar consumption at night, fasting blood glucose dropped by a small percentage. If someone normally wakes up with a fasting glucose of around 100 milligrams per deciliter, they might see it decrease to the mid-90s. That change may seem small, but metabolically it matters, because overnight glucose regulation happens every single day. Even small improvements, repeated consistently, accumulate over weeks and months. And the mechanisms we discussed are not instant switches. Insulin receptor sensitivity improves gradually. Liver glucose output adjusts over time. The gut microbiome shifts slowly in response to consistent inputs. This is why consistency matters far more than dosage. Most people try something for a few days, notice no dramatic effect, and stop. But the physiological benefits of this drink depend on repeated exposure to the same signals night after night. Think of it like exercise. One workout does very little, but repeated over time, the effects compound. The same principle applies here. After one night, the change is subtle. After 2 weeks, morning glucose may start trending lower. After several weeks, insulin sensitivity may improve. Appetite regulation can also begin to shift. But there's something else important. There is one mistake that completely cancels the effect of this drink, and it's extremely common: eating sugar or refined carbohydrates shortly before taking it. This includes small snacks that seem harmless. A cookie, a piece of toast, a dessert, even a late-night healthy snack. If you consume carbohydrates right before bed, blood glucose rises again. The liver must process that incoming glucose immediately. In that situation, the mechanisms triggered by the drink are working against an active glucose load. The drink is not magic. It cannot suppress liver glucose production while the body is simultaneously absorbing sugar from the gut. That's why timing matters. Ideally, your last meal should be 2 to 3 hours before sleep. Then the drink is taken about 30 minutes before bed. This aligns the metabolic effects with the overnight fasting window. When glucose levels are already declining, the drink helps regulate liver output and insulin sensitivity. But if you snack late, that window disappears. Another common mistake is inconsistency. People take the drink occasionally and then expect results. But the microbiome effects, insulin sensitivity changes, and metabolic adjustments require regular use. Sporadic use produces sporadic results. Regular use creates cumulative benefits. There are also a few safety considerations. If you have acid reflux, stomach ulcers, or sensitive digestion, start with a smaller amount of vinegar. The acidity can be irritating for some individuals. Always dilute the vinegar in water. Never drink it undiluted. This protects both the esophagus and dental enamel. Using a straw can also help reduce contact with teeth. If you are taking medications that lower blood sugar, especially insulin or certain oral medications, speak with your doctor before using this regularly, because improving glucose regulation may enhance medication effects. This is not dangerous, but dosing may need adjustment. One more thing to understand. This drink is not a replacement for diet, exercise, or muscle mass. Those factors have far larger effects on blood sugar. What this drink does is target a very specific metabolic window, the overnight period, that most strategies ignore. It works alongside your core habits, not as a shortcut. And improving that window can help support long-term metabolic health by optimizing how the liver and insulin receptors interact during the longest fast of your day. By focusing on this specific overnight window, we are addressing a gap in typical metabolic strategies. It's about creating a stable environment while you sleep. When integrated with a healthy lifestyle, this simple protocol helps shift your body toward better metabolic flexibility and resilience over the long term. Because overnight glucose dysregulation is linked to insulin resistance, fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, conditions that develop slowly over years, this isn't just about a number on a monitor. It's about the cumulative health of your organs and your vascular system. Every night that you keep your glucose level stable, you give your body a chance to repair. Small improvements, repeated nightly, may help shift that trajectory in a healthier direction, moving you away from chronic disease and toward metabolic resilience. It's a journey of 1,000 steps, and this drink is one simple, effective tool in your kit. That's why something this simple can still be meaningful, when used consistently and correctly. Thank you for following this masterclass. Remember, consistency is your greatest ally. Here's to your long-term health and a more resilient metabolism. Everything we've discussed comes back to one simple but overlooked idea. The hours between your last meal and the moment you wake up are not metabolically neutral. Your body is still working. Your liver is still active. Hormones are still being regulated, and glucose is still being managed, even though you're asleep. During this overnight period, hepatic glucose production continues. The liver releases stored glucose into the bloodstream to maintain stable energy levels. Under healthy conditions, this process is tightly regulated. But when insulin sensitivity is reduced or when glucose levels remain elevated late into the evening, this overnight regulation becomes inefficient. The liver releases more glucose than necessary. Blood sugar stays higher, and the body compensates by releasing more insulin. Night after night, this pattern gradually contributes to insulin resistance. This is why fasting glucose often rises slowly over time. It's not always daytime habits. It's what happens during the overnight metabolic window. Lower insulin in the morning often leads to more stable energy, reduced cravings, and better metabolic flexibility. Over time, this may support improved glucose tolerance and reduced metabolic stress. But it's important to keep expectations realistic. This drink is not a cure. It will not reverse metabolic disease on its own, and it does not replace a structured diet, physical activity, or maintaining muscle mass. Those factors have much larger effects on blood sugar regulation. What this drink does is address a specific physiological window that most health advice ignores. The transition between your last meal and overnight fasting. It works best when combined with simple habits. Finish your last meal earlier in the evening. Avoid refined carbohydrates before bed. Maintain consistent sleep timing. Support muscle mass with resistance training. When those factors are aligned, overnight metabolism tends to improve naturally. There's also a long-term perspective worth considering. Conditions like insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, and type 2 diabetes do not develop overnight. They emerge gradually, often over years. Small nightly elevations in glucose accumulate. Insulin levels remain slightly elevated. Fat storage slowly increases. This progression is subtle. Most people don't notice it happening, but the same principle works in the opposite direction. Small improvements in overnight glucose control, repeated consistently, may gradually support better metabolic health over time. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. A simple habit repeated nightly for months often has more impact than dramatic short-term interventions. This drink is best viewed in that context, not as a quick fix, but as a small tool supporting overnight metabolic regulation. If there is one takeaway from this video, it's this. Metabolism doesn't stop when you sleep. Your liver is still deciding what to do with glucose. Your insulin signaling is still active. Your gut microbiome is still producing metabolic signals. The overnight window is quiet, but metabolically significant, and the choices you make before bed influence how your body handles glucose until morning. This drink is one way to support that window. Not because it's powerful on its own, but because it targets a process that repeats every night of your life. And over time, those nights add up. Every single night, your body undergoes this process. Every night is an opportunity to refine your metabolic response. This consistency is the foundation of health. The overnight window is not a break from metabolism, it is a critical phase of it. In the next part, we will explore the long-term impact of these nightly choices. Conditions like insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, and type 2 diabetes do not develop overnight. They emerge gradually, often over years. Small nightly elevations in glucose accumulate. Insulin levels remain slightly elevated. Fat storage slowly increases. This progression is subtle. Most people don't notice it happening. It's a series of small events that go unchecked. But the same principle works in the opposite direction. Small improvements in overnight glucose control, repeated consistently, may gradually support better metabolic health over time. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. A simple habit repeated nightly for months often has more impact than dramatic short-term interventions. Each night is a brick in the foundation. This drink is best viewed in that context, not as a quick fix, but as a small tool supporting overnight metabolic regulation. Next, we will see how these nights truly add up. Implementing the right habits is what turns theory into results. Finishing your last meal earlier in the evening isn't just a rule. It's about giving your insulin levels time to drop before you sleep. When you avoid refined carbohydrates before bed, you prevent a late-night glucose spike that forces your liver and pancreas to work overtime while they should be transitioning into a fasting state. Maintaining consistent sleep timing regulates your circadian rhythm, which directly influences how your body manages energy and hunger hormones the following morning. Supporting muscle mass with resistance training is equally vital. Muscle is your primary metabolic sink. The more you have, the more efficiently your body handles glucose, even overnight. When these factors are aligned, your overnight metabolism improves naturally. In our final part, we will bring everything together to define your new metabolic window. Metabolism is a lifelong journey. Every night you honor this window, you are protecting your future vitality. It's a commitment to your long-term health. By aligning your habits, meal timing, sleep consistency, and muscle support, you create a baseline for health that operates even while you rest. You are building a stronger version of yourself. The choices you make before bed are the architects of your metabolic flexibility. This is your new metabolic window, the foundation of everything we've discussed. Over time, these small nightly adjustments accumulate into a legacy of health. Your body remembers the consistency, and it rewards you with energy and resilience. Let every night be a step toward a healthier you. Honor the window, support your metabolism, and embrace the results that follow. This is the path to metabolic mastery.